Hi, welcome to the Dobbin Art Studio here in Barrie, Ontario. My name is Georgia Dobbin, and today we're going to paint a star Christmas ornament. I've put out on my palette today some Naphtha Red Light, Pine Green, Raw Umber, and Red Violet. This nice big gob here is some multi-surface sealer. All of these are found in the Heritage Multimedia Acrylic Starter Kit. I'm going to begin by establishing my red. We need to tone that a little bit. Add a little bit of raw umber to it. You're going to mix up a red that makes you happy. Cool that down a little with a little bit of red violet. I still want to tone this a little bit, and since my design is going to contain quite a bit of green, I'm going to add just a little touch of green to my background. Now to this I'm going to pick up some multi-surface sealer, and then I'm going to go ahead and start base coating my background. Well, I'm back with coat number 2 here. One of the things I neglected to mention the first time round was that Naphtha Red Light and Red Violet are transparent and semi-transparent colors. If I want to base coat with them, it behooves me to add an opaque color to them. That's one of the reasons I like to tone it with a raw umber and with the pine green. Both of these are opaque colors, so when I add them to my reds, I won't have to use as many coats. There we go. Nice toned red. I like this color a lot. Now, the design is a very simple 5-point design, and I've set it up so that beginners can succeed, and there's lots of places for you to cover up any mistakes or errant hairs or non-perfect tails, that sort of thing. What this design basically consists of are 5 comma strokes pulled into a common point. I begin by pulling the very first one, and then one on either side until it's filled to the desired width. So I've finished the inside of all of these strokes with a very simple round berry. And what that does is it'll help cover up anything that you don't really like either, because you can just grow a berry where you need to put it. Not necessary. You can do this freehand, or you can take a chalk pencil and just very lightly draw a line where you'd like your first stroke to be. All of these instructions can be found at www.dobbinartstudio.com, and you can download the line drawing, step-by-step photos, and the instructions. I'm going to move over and I'm going to use a number 3 Jansen Art round brush, and I like to dampen my brush, and I'd like to paint these strokes green. I'm going to dip into a little bit of pine green here and load my brush. My brush has a little bit of water in this, so it's getting a little bit inky, and I think I'm going to lighten that up with a little bit of white. That's a pretty color. I may just even dip into a little bit of my background color just to tone that and add a little bit of harmony. That's pretty. Okay. So if I want to get a little fancier, I can also tip my brush. When you're tipping, you're going to create a little white dot of paint at the end of a fully loaded color brush, and then when you pull your stroke you get these lovely streaks and variegations. In order to do that, you want to properly prepare your paint and give yourself a little bit of tipping soup, I like to call it. I'm going to dip my palette knife into some water. Just put a couple drops of water on my palette. Then I'm going to lift up some of my white paint. I'm going to whip it up till it's nice and wet. There we go. It's not super soupy. It's not really, really wet. It still has some loft to it, but it's not as thick a consistency and viscosity as when you pour it out of the tube. The Heritage paint is nice, thick paint. And I'm going to pull it, and I'm just going to create a nice little channel so I can dip my brush into my channel each time. Okay, every time I pull a stroke, I'm going to blend and reload my brush. So you begin by loading your brush with a color, and then tipping it straight up and down into your trough of white. This leaves, like I said, we'll tighten up a little bit here, a little bit of paint just on the end of your brush. Okay. Now when I pull my stroke, I'm going to begin my stroke at the top. I'm going to press, hesitate a little bit, let it come out and thicken, and then lift. Going to press, pull and lift. Now I'm going to reach over and I'm going to load my brush with the green, tip it in the white, dot it, press, pull, and lift. Press, pull, and lift. Press, pull, and lift. There, pretty. Now, the center isn't looking all that tidy. So what I'm going to do now is base coat in a couple of berries. And I'm going to do that using some natural red light. And don't forget, natural red light is a semi-transparent color. So we're going to need something in there to make it a little more opaque. So I'm going to mix it with something that is opaque, and I'm going to brush mix it again with a little bit of raw umber. I might add a little bit of white to it this time too. Once again, who can resist a tiny bit of green when we have green in our design? Now, that's looking a little muddy to me, so I'm going to add a little more red to it, just to brighten it up just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give myself a nice little trio of berries here. And look at that. See how nicely that just covered up all the ends of my little twigs. Keep that a little round. While it's still wet, I'm going to tip my brush into some red violet. Darken that up a little. Red violet is a lovely cool color. Add a little bit of red violet and a little bit of raw umber. A little more red violet here. It darkens the value, and I can create my shadow on the bottom of these berries. And I'm just going to do that today by putting a little stroke of dark on the bottom. The bottom of each berry. Now, as a nice little trick, I can take a wet flat brush, and because this is all still wet, I can just gently blend that out with a little bit of water. Et voila! You didn't even have to float. But that smooths out that transition and just makes it a little prettier, right? Okay. Now what we need to do is put a little highlight on that. So we're going to go back to our palette, and we're back in our natural red. And I'm going to add a little bit of white to that, a little pinkish color. If I wanted to further enhance the brightness of this, I could add enhance a yellow, but I haven't got any enhance a yellow in my palette today, so I think I'll stay away from that. And I can just put a little highlight across the top. Okay, nice little comma stroke. Now again, I can rinse out my brush, just give it a little flatten here, and with a damp brush, soften that transition. Isn't that cool? I love how that works. So you don't have to be perfect. Set you up to succeed. As my final, I want the viewer to look at the center. So I'm going to direct the eye by picking up just a tiny bit of white and just pop. Popping a little white on the end of each. And since that's still so wet for my wet brush, it's just bleeding out a little bit, and I really like the way that looks. I hope you've enjoyed painting that, and I hope you paint lots of them. I hope you change the colors, and I hope you experiment and really have fun. Merry Christmas from the Dobbin Art Studio and from myself and my family.